2018 majority makers, we know Build Back Better is a winning agenda. And here to discuss that article and more is Minnesota Congresswoman Angie Craig. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. I just wanted to ask you, you are in a swing district, right? So would would you imagine that your seat could be vulnerable in 2022? I mean, do you think that and about that, and did that enter at all into your calculation as you signed on to this op-ed?
Well, thank you for having me, Alex. And, you know, I led this op-ed because we were hearing last week really from progressives and moderates, some of whom won their seats by 15 to 20, even one who won his seat by 40 percentage points. And I thought it was really important that my colleagues and I, who came into office in 2018, not just because we had a very unpopular president at the time, but because we made a lot of promises to our voters. The promises we made to our voters, that is the Build Back Better Act. The infrastructure bill obviously is also a part of that and incredibly important. But if we learned anything from 2010, I hope it is that the more we stand up and we deliver to our promises to our voters, the better off we're going to be as Democrats in the next election.
So let's get to some of the details here in this Build Back Better bill. You and 5 other members of Congress signed on to this op-ed, and here's the quote. We made promises to our voters to fight to lower the cost of health care and prescription drugs, expand access to early childhood and post-secondary education, fix the roads, and address the urgent threat of climate change as we enacted policies designed to benefit hardworking families. I mean, everyone, Congresswoman, seems to agree that the reconciliation package has to be trimmed back in order to pass and win the support that it needs to do so. But where can you cut?
Well, the president was pretty clear with House Democrats when he met with us a week ago on Friday that we were likely looking at something in the neighborhood of $2 to $2 trillion in the end that could get past the Senate. There are a number of ways to do that, and some of your guests throughout the day have talked a little bit about that. Do we take this 10-year investment of really good ideas like early childhood education, community college, trade school, paid family leave? Do we take some of these ideas and pare them back, let's say to 7 years to achieve some cost savings? I think what is the most dangerous thing that we can do is to draw lines in the sand. And the truth is, in these swing districts, and Alex, I won my seat by 2.2 percentage points on re-election in the last cycle. I was the 5th closest race in the country. I'm one of those majority makers. We have to deliver on our promises. Yes, there are going to have to be some compromises. We'd all like to get everything we want, but in a world in which the Senate has a 50-50 tie, we've got to make sure we keep pushing for the promises we made to our voters, but we're not. None of us are going to get everything we want out of this package.
Yeah, well said, absolutely. What about, are you convinced that wealthier Americans, those folks that are making over about $400,000 a year, will they be able to pay for this legislation over the next decade with absolutely zero being added to the debt? I mean, would new taxes, would that offset that?
I think, Alex, that that's what's really critical about our messaging here as Democrats. This is a 10-year investment, and we're committed to paying for it by making wealthy Americans pay their fair share and by making those companies across America. And I spent 2 decades at 2 different healthcare manufacturing companies, making sure that everybody is paying their fair share. I'm out with independent voters a lot, with Republican voters a lot. My district is dead even at 50-50, Democrats versus Republicans. And I can tell you that there is a lot of support because they want to make sure everybody's paying their fair share. They feel like they're paying their fair share. For years, people have said to me, Angie, the middle class just continues to be decimated. And this package is the biggest middle class tax cut in decades. The child tax credit is just extraordinary. Extending the tax credits in the individual market for the ACA, the premium tax credits, it's extraordinary. So many incredibly important things. Childcare, childcare, childcare. Mark Zandi said it a minute ago. Mm-hmm. The jobs report that just came out, Alex, it's about women who are leaving or not coming back into the workforce. And we need policy solutions that are going to help us change just that.
So I know, Congresswoman, that you have suggested it is more likely for Democrats, even those in swing districts like yourself, to potentially lose their seats if they do not pass this. What part of the Build Back Better program do you think would get the most support and thereby the most votes?
Well, I think extending the child tax credit is incredibly important. As I said, it's a huge middle-class tax cut. It affects 40,000 households in my congressional district. Our ability to finally stand up and take on drug costs in this country, and this has been a little bit controversial. I sit on Energy and Commerce. 3 of my colleagues did not report prescription drug negotiations on Medicare out of that committee. My voters need to know that I'm there to serve them, that I'm willing to stand up to the special interest groups, Big Pharma, the U.S. Chamber. They're already running ads against me, which is really extraordinary, because if businesses want workers to come back into the workforce, we need to address childcare and women in the workforce. So, you know, I hope the U.S. Chamber runs ads against my Republican colleagues who vote against the Build Back Better Act, because they are holding workforce and our families behind if they vote against this bill.
Okay, Minnesota Democratic Congresswoman Angie Craig, come see me again. I enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much.